Mid-session review, what the North Shire's lawmakers are doing. The Vermont legislative session is about halfway completed, but much work is still left to be done. This session has been exceptionally busy with debates over the way we provide and finance education, the proposed state budget, ethics reform, civil liberties, and a host of other issues on the legislative agenda. We have new leadership in many aspects of state government as well. A new governor, a new lieutenant governor, a new Speaker of the House, and a new President Pro Tem of the Senate. This legislative session has been interesting to follow, to say the least. Last November, we re-elected incumbent Senator Dick Sears and Senator Sen Campion to represent all of Bennington County and the town of Wilmington in the Vermont Senate. We also re-elected incumbent State Representative Cynthia Browning and elected newcomer Representative Brian Keefe to represent the Bennington 4 district, that is, the towns of Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and part of Sunderland in the Vermont House of Representatives. But what have our local lawmakers been up to since the legislative session began in January? What committees have they been working on, and what legislation have they put forward? Senator Sears has returned to the Senate as longtime chair of the Judiciary Committee and a member of the Appropriations Committee. Much of the legislation sponsored by Senator Sears is judicial in nature. Senator Sears has the distinction of being the lead sponsor on S-79, a bill that would promote public safety and protect Vermont residents from the compulsory collection of personal information and would prohibit use of that information for the purposes of establishing a federal registry. This tripartisan legislation was put forth by Republican Governor Phil Scott, Democratic Attorney General T.J. Donovan, and several lawmakers, including Democrats, Republicans, and progressives, in response to the executive orders by President Trump. Senator Sears ensured that the legislation made it smoothly, but properly vetted through the Judiciary Committee. The legislation passed the Senate unanimously on a vote of 30-0. Senator Campion returned as vice chair of the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy and was made a member of the Committee on Finance as well. Bennington County, therefore, has representation on both money committees, Appropriations and Finance, in the Senate. Senator Campion has been a sponsor of a number of pieces of legislation. He is the co-sponsor on important legislation that would ensure Vermont's goal of generating 90% of its energy from renewable sources by 2050. Both Senator Sears and Senator Campion have sponsored bipartisan legislation to mitigate the power of the State Board of Education, which has recently come under fire for its attempt to dampen school choice and overregulate independent schools like Burr and Burton Academy. They are right to hold the board accountable for its actions. Both senators have also sponsored legislation that would hold liable persons or corporations that have contaminated potable water supplies. This legislation is in response to the PFOA crisis in North Bennington and passed the Senate decisively on a voice vote. Senator Campion and Senator Sears deserve praise for their hard work to preserve school choice, protect our civil liberties, ensure water quality, and reach our state's energy goals. Representative Browning was made a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, which determines revenue sources for government spending proposals. She has sponsored legislation that would address the essential debate on how we finance primary education in Vermont, including legislation that would provide greater flexibility for mergers in cases of school consolidation. Representative Browning has been a fiscal hawk on the Ways and Means Committee, protecting the backs of taxpayers. Representative Brian Keefe, a freshman lawmaker, was made a member of the Committee on Human Services. He has also sponsored legislation that would fundamentally reform education and financing. Keefe is also focused on economic development, a crucial issue in Bennington County, by sponsoring legislation to promote capital investments through tax incentives and to provide more flexibility for independent contractors. Both Keefe and Browning, like Campion and Sears, have also sponsored legislation to limit the power of the State Board of Education and to preserve school choice. They have also sponsored legislation to establish ethics rules in state government. Both House members have done essential work for the people of the North Shire so far this session. It's important for us to keep track of what legislators are focusing on and what priorities they share. In the 2017 legislative session, our lawmakers have done great work in the first half of the session, and I expect they'll continue to do so for the remaining months that the legislature is convened.